G'day Clayers, Kim here. Just want to go through the jigsaw. I hope you like my design. This was a request by Liz, and let me show you how these are used. Right, I've got one finished here, and that allows you then to do two colors, or take that out of the center and leave it vacant and give the other piece to a friend, daughter, or a husband even. Alright, so I'll set that aside. That is in Desert Sun and Ruby Bronze. In this I will be needing my clay stay. I have my own cream that I use to keep the surface of my textures all moist, and which I've already done, and this is my new templates. So I'll just take them out. The brown on the backing will come off, so it will be clear just like this one here, and so this is your template. So all I do with this is make sure that all your sides, just oil all your sides on your jigsaw, which I have actually already done, so don't need to go over that again. Alright, and I've just got some Desert Sun here that I'm just going to undo, that I've already made up. So I love the premium clays. Right, so I've taken just off a nice little chunk there. I've got my tissue blade, which I will need. I have my texture, so I'm going to place my texture right there and my template right there as well. Just massaging this through. Slightly off camera there. Just make sure that's all good. Now all I do with this is just make a little patty, slightly thicker, and then I compress it. The plate is thick enough to take a nice thickness for your jewellery pieces, which is roughly around about the 6 cards thick, but by the time you take your textures in, it'll be a little bit less. So it's probably about 4 to 5.5, 4, between 4 and 5. So I just slice this off. So just make sure you oil. So just pop a little bit of oil if you need to on your tissue blade, and be very, very careful with making sure that you don't cut your fingers. And I just roll back, just keep cutting like that and rolling back the clay. Right, so now all I'm just going to do is just take any excess off, because if you take the excess off now and just pat it, now you can actually add a little bit of texture on the back. So I've just got a little bit of plastic here, and I can just add a little bit of a crease and just give that a nice little tap through, and that will give me a nice little texture on the back as well. Alright, so just peel that off. So I'm left with that. So as you can see, there's minimal cleanup. There will be hardly any sanding whatsoever to do. If you've just run your finger over that, make sure that you've got all the edges off. Okay, and let me flip that over for you. So this is one way that you can do it, and just leave it there on the texture, and then that'll actually just dry. And so that, as you can see, the edges are extremely clean, and there won't be any cleanup on that. You can see it's a nice little thickness, all ready to go. So I just set that aside and dry it. This is another way of using my templates. So we're going to use this big one again, because we're looking at a pendant. So I want to put one of these smaller ones inside. So I'll just pop that in. Let me see, I will just turn that around. So I've got them facing exactly the same direction. So there we have it there. Alright, so I've oiled my mat up, and I've oiled each piece up with my clay cream. And all I'm going to do here is just push that down. And as I said, it's a really, really good thickness that I already have. So pushing this down, keeps the edges nice and clean. Keep pushing that. And you can see the little one just slightly exposed just through there. And make sure that you've got a little bit of oil across your tissue blade. And just try not to pick up your little one as you go past it. And then we have that. Alright, just clean off the tissue blade. Alright, and all I'm just going to do, it's a bit like blue tack. I just use the leftover clay just to pick itself up. And now I'm just going to tap that down. And make sure that there's no air bubbles in the process. Clean off the edges with my finger. And again, I'm just using it a bit like, you know, blue tack, where if I've got any left over on my finger, it will just pick it up straight on the piece of clay that I've just been using. Now, if you find that you think that your piece is not in the right spot, just move it down. So I've just done that just to show you. So I've just moved that down a little bit. Make sure that I've kept my surface nice and flat, and then I'll just add a little bit more clay, push that down, and make sure I've got a really good connection. Come back and skim off the surface. All right, and then back down to just trimming that all off by literally by tapping that with my finger. And there we have that. So I'm just setting my clay aside. So I have a couple of different textures. So I'm just going to use a little swirl, and I'm actually going to use a wing on the other one as well. So with the little one here, I'm just going to use some ruby into this one here, which is actually the replacement that will go straight into there. So now what I will do is I've just got my little bit of ruby. I keep that in my little, always keep it in my little pots. Love these little pots. They seal beautifully. And I'm just going to pull just a little ball. Squish that down. That's how simple it is. You don't have to worry about rolling it out or any thicknesses. Just clean off your blade from the desert sun that you've used. Clean off your ruby, just like that. I'll just use my finger just to make sure that I've got all the edges nice and clean, there's no air bubbles under it, and I just use the clay then to pull it off my finger if it needs to be. Alright, so, and I'll pop that back into my pot. Alright, so the next thing I do, right, so I'm just going to lift these carefully up, just pull that off gently, And I didn't put quite enough oil on the bottom there, but that's okay. It'll all spread out and you'll see what I'm about to do. Alright, so with the small one, I want the impression of the edge of the wing. So what I'm going to do is place this on the texture in the direction that you want, and that's why I wasn't worried about the front of it, and tap that down onto it. Picking up the texture. Now I know that the wing is quite a deep texture, and the way I've positioned it, I'm only going to get a certain amount of texture on it. It's not going to be fully covered, but that's okay. That was the plan. Alright, so let me just take that off and show you. Alright, so that's my little corner of my wing. Alright, so next is I want to add the swells. So I'm just going to turn it upside down again, and the desert sun will go onto the swells here. So I'll just pop that in. Now you don't want too much time between drying, so you want to keep that covered, the surface of it, so you can pick up the texture. Tap that down, and then you'll have a nice swell texture on the front of that. Now remember that the little jigsaw is still inside of that, and we want to leave that there. Clean off as much as you can. So if you get any little overhangs or little edges, the cleaner it is, the more perfect that the ruby will be when you go to fit it in. Now I'm not pushing down, I'm only pushing down the clay, I'm not pushing down the plate. So the plate, alright, so let me show you now the texture of that. So just gently peel that off. I'm not too worried if it does come off with the texture, that's okay. As long as it stays nice and clean. Alright, so in this case, when they are like that, what I would do is I'll just leave that on that texture plate. Let the surface dry and then just peel that straight off. And then I'll let this dry, and then I'll come back and I will just take off those little edges. You can see that there's a couple little edges that are on that. And that's pretty much about it. So I'll come back to you when they're dry. So before it gets too dry, all I'll do is I will just use my little tool cutter. As you can see there, little tool cutter. And just pop in the corners there on these little overhang loops. And they'll be ready to pull off. I'll take that all off together once they're dry. Just be careful with your texture. I've only just done that very, very lightly. You don't want to mark your texture, but they're quite strong, so they're great textures. So just got the surface dried, so it's not completely dry yet, and all I'm just going to do now is just gently peel that off. Just nice and easily. It's just coming off beautifully there. Right, and as you can see, just one of the little dots just came out. Alright, so I'm just going to sit that back onto my little sheet. Leave my little piece to dry just there. Leave it in it. And this is the first one we did. Could have left this one just drying the surface a little bit longer, but there we go. It's quite a deep texture, that one. All right, and let me pop out the little one. So, oops, that one's so easy because that one is quite small. All right, so they're the two that are ready to go. I'll just dry them. As you can see, they're still quite wet. Dry them and come back to you and show you how the rest works. This one here is my first jigsaw. So while I'm waiting for the others to dry, I'll just show you this. So this is the one I would use for bracelets. Love this. So I've just got some clay. Again, just Aussie. This is the Desert Sun. Turn that light back on. Sorry about that. And I'm just pressing that down, making sure that I've got no air bubbles or anything underneath. And I'm just going to make sure you always just got a little bit of oil or whatever you use just on my blade, and just skim the top off. I generally come from side to side. There we go. Alright, so with that set aside, and I'm just pressing that down. Again, as I said, what you're doing is you're pushing that down, making sure there's no air bubbles, and making sure that you've got all the edges all cleaned off, so it's all good. Peel that off. Got a lovely smooth surface. So love the clays that you can even just tap that out, just even in its wet state. So there we go. And just set that aside to dry. That is how simple that can be. Now what you can do then is grab my little mini cutters and whack in the center. So that can then be ready to put your loops on for your bracelet to be joined. Simple as that. So I'm going to come back and I will do another video with this being syringed using my clay stay. So now I've got them semi-dry. They're not completely dry yet. So I'm just going to pull out the center here of this one here. Just taking that easy just to get those little tiny lugs out. There we go. You may have a little tiny, as you can see, there's a little tiny edge just there. Just to scrape off. So I'll let that inside area dry off, and then we'll come back and I'll set that into there. And so I've just cleaned off the edges just a little bit. Alright, so I'm just ready to put that into there. So just tap that in. It's nice and gentle. Just keep making sure that you've got all the edges and it's all fits in nicely. Remember, they're almost dry. I'll put them back on the dryer to dry completely right through the center. You can do this from completely dry. Just going to flip that over. Right, so there we have it, just like the other one. There we go. And that is my new templates that I do. There's a few more in the range coming out in different styles. So I hope you enjoyed that, and see you again. Bye for now.